Try and smile at you all, let you know I care. Amen. Welcome back to Doctoral Program Things to Come II, Lecture 17. Forgot to get this squared away before there's so many parts to this puzzle. What do? Well, to get this set up, it's in our bedroom / living quarters. I got a bed here, big one, and a bed right here. I got about this much space to stand in between them two. And there's a dresser behind me, a movable one that usually is pulled out a bit. That's what I usually run into. Then there's getting the light fixtures up. Takes a while. Then there's the camera stand, that all plugged in, and this up. Things like that. But I don't mind doing it. It's just there's a lot of work involved in getting this going, and then I put it all away. And I keep doing that. And I am glad I have this equipment, though. It's a blessing. Hopefully it helps your experience to be better. Seems like the camera's over here, I'm over here, so it might be a little off on the angle, I don't know. This bed moves, hold on a second. Okay, it does not move. Well, Hurricane Ida just struck New Orleans area. We're up here in Texas, probably getting some scattered clouds and maybe a little bit of rain from that. That's many, many miles away. Well, what's the date? It is August, about the 30th, I think, 2021. Getting closer to fall. We call fall the second summer in Tejas. Chapter 30, this is Millennium Part 3. There's a Part 4. And there's, I think, going to be 2 on the Eternal State. That's the tentative plan. Worship in the Millennium. It deals with that, but like the temple. What goes on there? The restored theocracy is marked by the adoration given to the Lord Jesus Christ. There'll be a lot of worshiping going on in the millennial reign here on earth. There's a lot of verses you can look at there. And it shall come to pass, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. Amen. All flesh. And there'll be certain times. So don't just think of it as, like some do, like with heaven. It is constant. Everyone's before the throne just doing this. Well, all day long, all night long, always. Never ending. Which would be, he'd be worthy of it, but there's more that he has for us than just that. That is a lot. Roman numeral 1, the temple in the millennium. Red text. A large portion of the prophecy of Ezekiel, know that, is devoted to the temple, this millennial temple specifically. Know that, and we could read a lot on that and do it. If I was going through the book of Ezekiel, I'd really park here for a while through these chapters and from 40 on. Wow, it's good stuff. Black text. Its structure, its priesthood, its ritual, and its ministry. Various views have been presented concerning this important prophecy. There are at least 5 interpretations of these chapters at what time period it is referring to. Pentecost believes the correct view, using a literal interpretation, is that red text, Ezekiel is dealing with the temple that shall be built in the millennial age. Those that don't like that, because it doesn't fit their program, will change it to something else, some other temple. Black text, Unger concludes, Ezekiel's temple is a literal future sanctuary to be constructed in Palestine as outlined during the millennium. Ezekiel 37, and they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt. They shall dwell therein, even they and their children's children, forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. And I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Speaking to New Testament saints, the bride of Christ, all the saved. Well, specifically here to Jacob and his children, Israel, the Jews. The temple itself would be located in the middle of the Holy Oblation, and not in the city of Jerusalem. Upon a very high mountain, which will be miraculously made ready for that purpose when the temple is to be erected. This shall be the mountain of Jehovah's house, the Lord's house. Micah says, but in the last days it shall come to pass, red text, that the mountain of the house of the Lord, Jehovah, shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, black text, and people shall flow unto it. My understanding has been that this is part of Jerusalem, and that this temple is like the heart of it. And it just so happens that this Jerusalem, because of the topography of the earth changing so much from all that happened in tribulation, will be in the mountains. Might be part of a valley, but there'll be mountains. And don't think of mountains as 9,000 feet or 3,200 meters, however you do it in metric, but think of them as tall hills. Maybe 800 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet. And Jerusalem has hills, fairly tall hills. Yes, they do. A, the details of the temple. Through the prophet Ezekiel, numerous details are given to us concerning this temple that becomes the center of the millennial earth. So Jerusalem is the center of Israel. Israel is the center of all the earth. But in the center of Jerusalem is the temple. It would make sense, not have it outside like someone said there. The gates and courts surrounding the temple are first described. The entire area is enclosed by a wall, which is to separate that which would defile. I think of the New Jerusalem also. This goes with it. It goes with it. And what's the real? It's the New Jerusalem. What purpose do these things have? Like gates, walls, huh? The outer courtyard is described where the people gather. This is entered by 3 gates, one of which, built like all the rest, is the east gate, a structure 25 by 50 cubits. It's a big gate, through which the Shekinah glory enters the temple. Jesus does, which is kept closed. There is a gate on the northern side and on the southern side, each of which is entered by 7 steps, but none on the west. There's a reason for that, which I do not know. Maybe you do. In connection with each gate, there were 6 small chambers, 3 on each side. Around the outer court were 30 chambers, 5 on each side of each of the gates, arranged around the northern, eastern, and southern walls. And so it's somewhat similar to the original temple built. I remember reading about these. I didn't match it up to see if it's exactly the same. I don't know. Before these chambers is a pavement that extends around 3 sides of the area. The prophet next describes the inner court, and see how it flows through chapter 40 on here, which is an area 100 cubits on each side where the priests minister. There are 3 gates, each directly opposite the gates in the outer wall, and 100 cubits within that outer wall, through which access is gained to the inner court. 1 on the south, east, and north. So 100 cubits, so 150 feet or so. Is that right? Yeah. Maybe a little bit more. This inner court area is reached by 8 steps, so that it is elevated above the outer court. Adjacent to the north gate in this area, there were 8 tables for preparing sacrifices. And within the outer court, but without the inner court, were chambers for the ministering priests. The center of this area is occupied by an altar where sacrifices are offered. Sacrifices in the millennium? There can be sacrifices in the eternal state? Yeah, you'll see. Ezekiel then describes the temple itself. He describes first the porch or vestibule of the temple, which is 20 cubits by 11 cubits, not that big, no. The porch has 2 large pillars on it and is reached by steps, so that this area is elevated above the rest. This porch leads into, red text, the temple, which would be the holy place, an area 40 cubits by 20 cubits. Black text, in which is a wooden table. Red text, beyond this is the inner part of the temple, or most holy place, a chamber 20 cubits by 20 cubits. So 40 by 20 and 20 by 20. Holy place and the most holy place, or holy of holies, you might think of it as. Different sizes, but you get the general drift. And I don't think I'd trick you by saying this. which one's 40 by 20, which one's 20 by 20. I don't even know if I'll give you a question on that, but it's an easy one to put in. I like easy questions to put where I don't have to think it out too much. And it's easy to put some answers, some false answers, errors, you know. Black text, surrounding the wall of the house were chambers 3 stories high, that's tall, 30 to a story, 30 to a story, 30 what? 30 cubits, I guess, concerning whose use the prophet does not speak. The temple is surrounded by an area. I don't know about that 30 to a story. I have to look that up. The temple is surrounded by an area of 20 cubits by 100 cubits, called a separate place, which surrounds the temple on all sides except the east side, where the porch is located. The interior of the temple is described. It was paneled with wood and ornamented with palm trees and cherubim. There were 2 doors into the sanctuary, and it's noteworthy that in all the description, red text, there is no mention of an ark, or mercy seat, or veil, or cherubim above the mercy seat, or tables of stone. The only article of furniture described is the table or altar of wood. That answers to the table of showbread, black text, that which bespeaks communion with God. So it shows that this is different than the other temple in that regard, that's for sure. Included also in the temple area was a separate building located on the west side of the enclosure, areas where the sacrifices were prepared, and areas at the 4 corners where there was a court in which sacrifices for the people were prepared. Kind of detailed, huh? An extensive description of the throne is given in the prophecy, which is seen to be the very seat of authority. The altar description is detailed, followed by a recounting of the offerings which will be made. The priest's ministry is outlined and the entire worship ritual described. Red text, the vision climaxes in the description of the river that flows out of the sanctuary. Black text, this river flows from the temple south through the city of Jerusalem and then divides to flow into the Dead Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, furnishing life along its banks. And then we read about the eternal state, something similar to that. Type, any type. The any type, which is the true thing, the real thing. The others are shadows of it. Well, the millennial picture here is the shadow of the real thing. The real thing's not going to be symbolism. It's the real thing. So if this is doing something literally to help people, not just be, oh, that's a pretty pretty river flowing out of there, then in the future state, eternal state, it will be doing at least that. The purpose of the temple. Unger gives 5 purposes to be realized in this temple. He says it is erected to demonstrate God's holiness, to provide a dwelling place for the divine glory. This is the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. It's erected to perpetuate the memorial of sacrifice, to provide the center for the divine government, and to provide victory over the curse. And there he talks about this river that flows. From under the threshold of the temple house, the prophet sees a marvelous stream issuing and flowing eastward in ever increasing volumes of refreshment until it enters in copious fullness into the Dead Sea, whose poisonous waters are healed. Traversing the course of this wondrous life-giving water, the seer finds both banks clothed with luxuriant growth of trees of fadeless leaf and never-failing fruit, furnishing both medicine and food. Now that is interesting, especially when you think about the eternal state, because it's 1,000 times more interesting than me. Okay, how do I want to do this? Not quite tired enough for a stop, but let me just do a little bit more. Roman numeral 2, millennial sacrifices. One of the problems accompanying the literal interpretation of the Old Testament presentation of the millennium is the problem surrounding the interpretation of such passages as, there's a list of there, all of which teach the restoration of a priesthood and the reinstitution of a bloody sacrificial system during that age. So does that go on in the millennium? Is that true, or is it symbolism? An alleged inconsistency between this interpretation and the teaching of the New Testament concerning the finished work of Christ, which brought about the abolition of the Old Testament sacrificial system, has been used by the amillennialists to reduce the premillennial system to an absurdity and to affirm the fallacy of the literal method of interpretation. Ah ha ha ha. You might have to pause and reread that. I sure had to reread it. It's a long sentence. If a consistent literalism leads to the adoption of literal sacrifices during the millennium, it becomes necessary to give reason why such a system should be reinstituted. And here we go on into, not the weeds, but a lot of discourse, so we'll take a little breaky wakey here.